And get into the favorite five. If you are new here, any type of list we always do, we always start at the bottom and work our way to the top. Now, is it ranked? Yes. But I think it's not that heavily weighted in terms of the ranking. Right, like, this is kind of just the five teams. If I had to rank them, this would be the ranking. But it's like, what five teams have a legitimate chance to win the Super Bowl as of right now? Because I think at any point in time in the league, there's 5 or 6 teams, maybe 7, that have a realistic chance to win.
Shot.
Right, and I think 5, if you really get down to the nuts and bolts, 5 have a true chance. Let's start with number 5. I think the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Joe Burrow is going to be the most healthy that he's been in a long time, having, basically forced rest for the majority of the season last year. So he'll be back, healthy, ready to go. Jamar Chase is yet another year in the NFL, another year of experience. I have no reservations about him improving on an already great player. I do worry about the T. Higgins thing a little bit. Is he going to play? Are they going to trade him? How does that all work out? If he does play, do we have the full motivation behind T. Higgins? That's a problem. You lose Joe Mixon, that's an issue. I think they would be number 2 if those things were kind of ironed out. So there's some loose ends that I do worry about. But the defense can't possibly be as bad as it was last year. Kenny Pickett was atrocious and had his best game against them. So I don't know if they can be as bad again. So this is mostly, hey, Joe Burrow is really good. Zach Taylor's shown to be a good coach. Jamar Chase is fantastic. And they match up really well versus Kansas City, who obviously is somebody you have to get through. So I think Bengals at 5, realistic chance when you have a top 3 to 4 quarterback.
Yeah, and a lot of people have forgotten about them too. I mean, just because you have that year that's very injury riddled, and you tend to fall out of like people's the forefront of their I guess mind. It's just like once you see them start rolling and the Bengals play the way they have been the last 2-3 seasons without like barring this last year. I mean, that's a scary team, and that's a team that's due to make a really, really deep playoff run and then actually win a Super Bowl. So,
guess we'll see. Number 4 would be the Niners. Yeah, I mean, they have probably the best roster in the NFC. I worry because I think their quarterback has a limited ceiling. I said it last year.
That's still the problem.
Yeah, that was the problem last year. I said I think they're good enough to get to the Super Bowl, and they'll probably play Patrick Mahomes. And in a one-game scenario, Brock Purdy is not talented enough to win against Patrick Mahomes. Like I still feel the same way about that. Mm-hmm. So I would put them at 4. I think they have one of the best rosters. I do worry a little bit with them aging, and there's some aging stars that are getting expensive. Kittle's, I think, the number 1 or number 2 cap hit as a tight end in the league, and I don't view him as a top 3 to 4 tight end anymore. Still a really good blocker, still pretty productive, but he's probably not worth all that they're paying him. Debo's good, but they're paying him a ton. Ayuk's going to want a new contract. Is he even there during the season? So a lot to like. Again, some loose ends that may prevent them from being higher, because I think the Niners and Bengals would have been 2 and 3 ahead of the next 2 teams had they had those loose ends kind of wrapped up.
Yeah, but the problem is it's the same loose ends. It's the same problems. Like, they're attacking it with the same playbook and style and, like, MO as they did the past 2 seasons, and it just hasn't worked yet. Like, they are banking on making it to the Super Bowl.
They're so close.
And then banking on that game just going their way and falling their way and being physical enough. Because once the game turns physical, the 49ers win that 9 times out of 10.
Right, and I feel like the Niners and Bengals are so close, but for different reasons. The Bengals have the quarterback, and not that much else, right? Like the Jamar Chase, like decent O-line, defense is but it's like, I mean, it's the Joe Burrow show. Mm-hmm. The Niners have a great roster, and then you're like,
God, like the quarterback.
Is he the guy? Like, is Purdy gonna?
Well, he's not the guy. He's not the one that's gonna carry them. But unfortunately, he's also the guy that's gonna lose the game.
There's a possibility. There's a possibility. Number 3, the Ravens. I think when you have an MVP type quarterback, really good roster, solid foundation, good coach, I think you're always in it. And this is one of those where I think normally, if you would ask this question last year, I think the Niners and Bengals would have been above the Ravens. But getting Derrick Henry, you have a good run game now. Your offensive line's always fantastic. And Lamar just continues to get better from the pocket. Now, granted, I thought the MVP season was underwhelming last year. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, he's still a fantastic quarterback, probably top 5 or 6 quarterback in football. It's one of those where, now again, we don't do a ton of NBA, but the discussion before the Nuggets won the championship was like, I don't know if Jokic can do it in the playoffs. And then he did it, and now he's unquestioned a top 10 center of all time. Yeah. He's unquestioned the number 1 player in the league. But like a year before they won it, it was like, can he do it in the playoffs, though? So Lamar, it's like, the question is fair, can he do it in the playoffs? But until he does it, that's always going to be the question.
Yeah.
And I think he can do it. So I'm going to take my chance to say that he's going to do it, or at least get close enough to where we say, okay, we can respect him as a playoff quarterback now.
Yeah. It's just, there's, like you said, no sample size to choose from there, or to look at.
He's got, 5 playoff games, and he's been, I think he's 2-3 or 3-2, something like that.
I mean, it's not impressive.
He's been super average to slightly below average.
But you also have to realize that, the great ones, that the Tom Brady's, the Patrick Mahomes, in the playoffs, there's nobody better. You're not going to find anybody better.
Right, and people are always like, well, look at Mahomes' stats versus Lamar. It's like, well, that's you cannot compare anybody to Mahomes. It's like Derek Jeter, for all of his flaws, wasn't great defensively, hit 30 points higher in terms of batting average in the playoffs. There's just nothing that explains it. Right?
When the bright lights come on and the situation is the biggest and it means the most, those guys get it, and they are there.
Yeah, I think the Ravens have a top 5 roster, top 5 quarterback, top 5 to 7 head coach. So I think, they definitely deserve to be here in our favorite 5. Number 2, the Lions. I think they are the Niners, but a little bit better. I think it's a more cohesive unit, right? You don't have Ayuk that's going to sit out, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown's all in. And I would say keep your eye on them poaching some T. Higgins from the Bengals, another team on this list. If you're Cincinnati and Detroit says, I think they're drafting 27th or 28th, here's our number 28th pick for T. Higgins. So they would obviously have to sign T. Higgins. If you're the Bengals, do you do it? And if you're the Lions, do you do it?
I would. I think that's a mutually beneficial trade. That one.
The Lions may have to throw in a 4th or something else like that, but that's
Either way, I think the culture in Detroit is strong. I think they are. That's a team that's going to be competing for the next 2-3 seasons.
Yes, it feels like a roster that's very comparable to San Francisco, but with a much better quarterback. I think Jared Goff's a much better quarterback than Brock Purdy.
I think a much
bigger,
better culture.
Stronger. Yeah, I think he's So I would go Lions.
I love it.
Line.
I think that team. We have been on the Lions we've had the podcast for we're going on 4 years.
I feel like for the last 3, we've been at least positive regarding the Lions.
We've been watching this Lions come up for a while now, and it feels good.
Well, because I've been a Jared Goff guy forever.
Yeah.
I've always liked Goff more than most.
That's true.
And same thing with Kirk. I've always been
good.
Kirk more than most.
Jared Goff's better than Kirk now. I think so. Look at that season. They're in the same division. You can look at that.
Yeah, but Cousins got hurt last year, so I don't know. I don't know. That's close. I think at this stage in his career, Goff's a little bit younger. I would agree.
Goff has won a Super Bowl.
Been to a Super Bowl.
Been to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. They lost that.
You're right. I'd probably lean Goff. At this point, certainly Goff.
I'd go Goff.
Total body work, I'd probably go Goff too.
Yep.
All right, number 1, Chiefs. Obviously, best quarterback, best coach. Arguably still a top 3 tight end, even though, again, we just talked about how I'm not a huge fan of him. Defense basically won the Super Bowl last year, so kudos to them. That's an actual real unit now. Even losing Snead, I don't view it as a real problem. Yeah, there's our top 5.
I mean,
there's not a lot to say about
the number 1 isn't a very flashy pick. I mean,
no, and people were crushing me like, oh, congrats. Like when we picked the Chiefs over the Niners, first of all, it was
preseason.
It was preseason. Everybody was like, oh, congratulations, you picked a Vegas favorite. And I was like, okay, well, for two things. One, I'd rather be right than just be, wrong but interesting.
And trendy.
What's the benefit of me being like, you know what? I'm going to say it. I'm going to take the Titans to win. Because then you'd all be crushing me like, Titans, do you even know football? So then I pick the favorite, and they're like, wow, what a cop-out, just picking the favorite. It's like, okay, well, pick a lane, because you can't be in both.
Yeah.
Right? You can't be in both. And then also, oh, congrats, you just picked the Vegas favorite. I somewhat at least understand that. If I didn't predict it to the exact letter of what happened. I said both would have good seasons. They'd both get to the Super Bowl, obviously. And then I would say Brock Purdy would be really good throughout the entire year, but not good enough to win it in the big moment. And what happened?
That's exactly what happened.
He was really, really good all year, was a top 5 MVP candidate for somebody who should not be a top 5 MVP candidate, meets Mahomes in the Super Bowl, and looked like the completely inferior player in the Chiefs won. Yeah. So it's like, I told you exactly how it would happen from week 1 all the way to the Super Bowl.
Before the season started. And it's not like you just said, yeah, I think the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. It was you picked the matchup and then picked it correct, and then the mode.
Yes, the mode of it. Brock Purdy would be good, but not good enough.
So, yeah, run us back down the list.
From 1 to 5, Chiefs, Lions, Ravens, Niners, Bengals. There's your little way too early favorite 5 Super Bowl bubble.
Love it.